Guys, thank you for clicking on this video. This is I Seth Kills, otherwise known as Nick, and we're going to be talking about the exorcism of God today. And I gotta say, this one was a little bit surprising to me. I kind of stumbled across it, just trying to look for something to watch. To be honest, this movie came out in 2021. It does have some good callbacks to the original Exorcist. I'm a big fan of Exorcist. It's one of the first horror movies that I watched with my parents. It must have been, I don't know, maybe 9 or something. But so I got introduced to horror movies pretty early. Don't know if it was a good idea, but later on in life, I started really enjoying horror movies. But if you haven't seen this movie, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. It does have a very interesting premise, and this is going to be kind of a semi-spoiler review. It's not going to be a play-by-play, but we'll be kind of going over some spoiler stuff. I don't really hear of anybody talking about this movie. I saw this movie probably first time maybe 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago, and it kind of just been in the back of my mind because it's kind of one of those horror movies, because they haven't really been coming out with many good ones nowadays. So when you actually kind of, find one, it's kind of one of those rare oddities, especially if it's one of those ones that are like, you know, B movie hasn't come out in theaters. But surprisingly, it was really good. At the beginning of this movie, when you watch it, you'll see probably like 20 different production companies. And I'm not kidding you. There's a lot of production companies that made this movie. But basically, kind of a short premise. It basically involves a father, and the premise is this father at the beginning of the movie was performing exorcism on the character. Her name is Irene Costello. Uh, she plays the person who is actually possessed. And in the beginning of the movie, the father goes in, and it's a nice little callback to the first Exorcist because it has that like little street sign scene where he's above the street sign, he's in front of the door of the house, and it's dark everywhere else. So they kind of have that scene with this guy, and he enters the house and he starts performing the exorcism. But basically, the premise is what happens if the priest gets possessed during the exorcism. And the first scene kind of draws you in. Like I said, this is not for the faint of heart, and this movie is very graphic. And the dialogue that the person that's possessed, is very on point as far as what you would think a possessed person would say, especially if they're like a demon's inside them, which obviously it always is a demon, right? But he's just saying this awful stuff. And I'll leave that, for you, so when you watch it, you'd be a little bit surprised. But the dialogue in it is very interesting. It calls back, or it reminds me at least, of Exorcist, and the dialogue that I forgot what her name was. I know, Reagan, yeah, that Reagan was saying to the priest. But in the beginning of the movie, he's performing the exorcism, and the demon inside the girl kind of tempts the priest, who already kind of, during some scenes in the movie, kind of has this attraction, I guess, for a nun. And it kind of portrays that throughout the film. And he gets tempted and he kisses the possessed person. And then himself becomes possessed, and then that's where the movie title, when he actually gets possessed, that's when the movie title kind of shows up. And so during the whole movie, you're kind of trying to figure out what happened. I mean, you can kind of guess what happened, but you don't really know. So that's kind of like the basic premise. Later on, you find out um, through like flashbacks, and you see what he's doing now. Like they take you after this cutback, they take you like 20 years in the future, or 25 years, or something like that, and he's trying to perform another exorcism, and you find out that this person that he's trying to perform an exorcism, which happens to be at this what looks like a mental hospital or a prison for females only, and he's performing the exorcism, and then he finds out through a visitor after he's tried, you know, basically first time communicating with the possessed. He finds out that his daughter, and he's all this time had this video that he's been basically holding on to. And there's a scene in the movie where he's about to, you know, come clean because he's always felt guilty because he's him himself always knew what he did. I mean, he might have been possessed, he might not remember, but he has a videotape of it because he was taping the exorcism. So he goes to the cardinal and he's about to report himself. And at this time, he's, taking care of a bunch of kids at the shelter. I forget where the shelter is. It looks like maybe somewhere in Mexico or somewhere South America. And you see that he's taking care of these kids, and they're waiting for some supplies. And the bishop, tells him that his supplies have been approved, and he gives him a check as almost the same time as when he's about to give him the tape of the evidence of what really happened. And he decides not to because of the grant or the support that he'll be getting for the shelter. So it's almost like it's almost for selfish reasons because it's making him look like a, saint when he goes back to the shelter. But also the shelter needs it too. So it's, the movie's trying to tell you something there that he's kind of has trouble with, what he did. He has regret, remorse. He wants to come clean with it, but temptation kind of strayed him away. And so the movie kind of progresses, and you find out obviously what happened. The movie shows you what happened. And later on, he promises the mother, which is the girl who was possessed, that he's going to save his daughter. And I'm like I said, this is not going to be a play by play. I'm just going to be kind of talking about the journal, just the movie. And some of the acting, like that a lot of the female characters portrayed, and a lot of like one of the characters played the older father. They all did excellent. Like I don't know. I don't know if this is their first movie. I think I've recognized some of them, but they all did fantastic. Like they were very believable, especially the ones who were possessed. And the older father did pretty well, but the main protagonist, the main father, sometimes his acting's a little bit off, but the kind of story and what's happening kind of draws you in, and that's kind of like a little bit of a minor detail, but his acting kind of brings you out a little bit, but it's not that bad. So, um, so when they go back to the prison, after you find all this information, they start, trying to do the exorcism again. The older father comes and tries to help, and the movie kind of makes a turn. Now, this movie has a lot of like reminiscences of like Conjuring and Sinister, and then also obviously Exorcist. So it kind of has times where it feels like multiple movies, but multiple types of scary movies. And they start to possess or start the exorcism, and you notice that she's taking possession of all the female inmates, and becomes like this almost zombie type possession movie where, you know, 4 or 5 different possessed, you know, people are chasing after the two fathers. And then you kind of start figuring out, more information on, the older father and some of the things that he's done in the past. And you find out that he's already made a deal with the demon, which I thought was kind of an interesting twist. And the movie's kind of pointing out that maybe the Vatican has been infiltrated by demons or even the devil, and basically allowing evil to happen. So it has like a very, very interesting premise, very interesting story. How it was like there's spots in the movie where it was like a high budget horror movie. And then there are spots in the movie too where you can tell that it was done on a very low budget. But if you're one of those people that love horror movies and love The Exorcist, love like even the newer scary movies like Sinister, Conjuring, or Nun, or any of those movies, you'll get a kick out of this movie. So if you haven't watched it yet, I would definitely suggest it. At the very end of the movie, it kind of has, can see, well, kind of skipped ahead, but at the end, and I'll just skip all the way to the end since we're paraphrasing. At the end, it has this kind of little cool scene where the possessed ends up catching the main protagonist's father. And this is after we find out what, the older priest has done, that he's already made the deal with the demon, and that he's basically powerless. It has a scene where, he, because he destroyed the tape after he's gotten that money for the shelter, and he ends up taping another video confessing to what happened and sends it to the bishop, which relieves him of all that guilt. So he's more powerful in God. So he goes out and like basically is a lot more powerful, was able to. Oh, and by the way, this movie has um, a possessed Jesus, which is freaky as hell, and has this like little doll thing in it as well. And I'm guessing that it's different demons or maybe the same demon just taking different forms. But they really used it, I think, pretty well throughout the movie and different dream sequences and different parts of the movie. And it's pretty freaky. So you'll have a lot of jump scares as well. But back to what I was saying, once they, catch the father, they, at the end of the movie, are trying to exorcise God out of the father, or make a deal, basically. And basically, what happens is, after them trying to exercise each other, they both couldn't win. It was kind of like a battle. And they ultimately make a deal because he wants his daughter to be saved and he wants the children that's in the heritage to be saved because right now they're in danger. And he just makes a deal. He says, I'll let you take God out of me. Basically, make it easy for you to possess me if you can spare my daughter. So they make this deal, and at the end of the movie, it shows his daughter again. They give him like a big hug, and he meets up with a bishop, and you see his eyes kind of glow, kind of like X-Men Mystique, and he's possessed. And some reason he has some type of respect for the priest that he says that, you know, I forgot the bishop says something to the main father who's possessed now and says something. And he says, "Don't say that. This person, sacrificed himself for his daughter and children, and he should be respected," or something along those means. And he kind of just walks off, and it's under the presumption that he's going to the Vatican and kind of infiltrating the Vatican from inside. And I guess the assumption, I guess you can kind of think whatever he does, but I'm thinking he's corrupting it from the inside. And I just thought this story was very interesting because there's a lot of obviously evil in the world, and you got to think where this evil is coming from, and it makes you think, like if things like this is possible, that how evil spreads. But anyways, it's definitely an interesting watch, and I got a lot of fun out of it. So if you haven't seen it, I suggest definitely checking it out. I think it's available on Prime for rent. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this movie, sorry, if you guys enjoyed this video, please hit that like and subscribe button. And yeah, I'll be making more of it. I've been wanting to make a video of this movie for a while. I didn't know how I wanted to talk about it, so hopefully you guys enjoyed kind of like that description. It was kind of a little jarbled, but I'm getting kind of used to breaking down movies as they go. So, and I do this kind of like freehand, so I don't like write any scripts or anything like that beforehand. So, I'm trying it out. So hopefully I kind of get better along the way. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you on the next one.